So this ranking of UCLA, it smells fishy to me. And guess who the number one guy in the committee is? It's Boo Corrigan. He is the NC State athletic director. UCLA canceled the Holiday Bowl against NC State, and Boo Corrigan was really, really angry about it last year. I think it's a personal attack against UCLA. Who names their son Boo? Bias, Boo Corrigan, you. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Cover 2 podcast. I am Nick Nenad.
I am Jared Smith.
And guys, we got another football-filled show for you today. It's the middle of November. I guess the beginning of November, but still, we're in November now, so it's true football season. College is in its last couple weeks. We got conference championships coming up. We got rivalries coming up. So we'll start the podcast with college football, and especially the rankings that just came out yesterday, Tuesday. We'll get into that. You guys know we're all about the rankings and all about disagreeing with them on this podcast. So we'll get to that to start. Okay, Jared, let's get into college football because there's a lot to talk about here. You know, like I mentioned, every team is now at least 9 games into the season. And as you know, college football is a 12-game season, so there's only 3 games to go. The way the year is setting up, you know, we have a lot of big-time rivalry games happening. When we already saw LSU, Alabama happen this last weekend. But we have a lot of rivalry games starting next weekend. You know, the main one being USC, UCLA here in Los Angeles. That's going to be happening. And then, of course, to end the season, you have Michigan and Ohio State, and all these other big-time rivalry games that will really determine a lot in college football. So you know, we're getting to the nitty-gritty. And right now, I'll pull up the college football rankings that came out. We'll go over those really quickly because that's the biggest thing in college football, and then we'll get to the games in 1 second. And Jared, I think we should talk about the games before we go into the rankings really quickly. At least the big 2 that kind of started out the whole thing. So we have at number 1 Georgia. Most people are not going to argue with that. Number 2 Ohio State. Number 3 Michigan. 4 TCU. 5 Tennessee. 6 Oregon. 7 LSU. 8 USC. 9 Alabama. 10 Clemson, and then Ole Miss, UCLA at 11 and 12 to kind of round out the teams that still have a chance at the college football playoff. So before we get to the rankings, you know, we had Georgia move up to number 1, and we have Tennessee at number 5. Jared, your comments on Georgia's victory over Tennessee, which was a big one.
I mean, dominant. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure you were the one that was giving some disrespect to Georgia. Has it not been the last couple of weeks where you been a little down on Georgia? You know, giving them. I'm pretty sure I'm the one here that's been saying they're the defending national champions. Yes, they've had a couple of hiccups where they haven't blown out some teams that they should, but they're still the defending national champions with Kirby Smart, and they came out, albeit at home, albeit with the home field advantage, and those Georgia Bulldogs fans that are for real, and they came out and they smacked Tennessee in the mouth. And the only reason why that game wasn't a bigger, wider victory of margin was because it started to rain in the second half. If the weather would have kept up and held, Georgia probably would have won by 50. Okay, so Georgia showed and proved that they are for real. They have beaten 2, and I don't want to say beaten, they have dominated, absolutely fucking destroyed 2 top 10 teams. Week 1 against Oregon, where they absolutely killed them, 49-3. And then this past Saturday, beating Tennessee, an SEC team. So those 2 wins for me, the fact that Oregon is sitting at number 6, the fact that Tennessee is still at number 5 and was currently number 1 going into Saturday, those 2 wins for me will offset the kind of ugly wins that they had against Kent State and Missouri earlier on in the year. So Georgia clearly deserves to be number 1. And if you have any problem with that, I'm just going to turn this damn podcast off right now because we don't have anything to talk about then.
No,
So
Jay,
please go ahead.
I had him at number one. Okay, and here's what I was saying about Georgia the whole season. They just hadn't played anybody besides Oregon week one. Since Oregon week one, which was a home game. I know it was played in Atlanta, Georgia. It was a home game. They have not really been that impressive, even in some of their wins. Missouri, Kent State. Missouri was on the road, and they've actually, when you look at what they've done the rest of the year, they've been pretty tough at home against everybody they've played. So that one doesn't look as bad. Now, you're Georgia, you're a top 5 team. You should be able to go in there and win by a couple scores, right? But as we saw with Ohio State, sometimes you just don't, you lower down to your competition and whatever, right? But I needed to see Georgia beat, a really, really good team in Tennessee. And not only did they beat them, they trounced them. It was a home game, okay, which does put to their advantage. They haven't played a tough game on the road yet, like many other teams in the rankings, but extremely impressive. And what I want to actually take away more from that is that Tennessee went from a team that I thought was going to be, they're going to shock the college football world. They're going to come in here and they have all this talent, and then they looked like a team that wasn't ready for the big time. Because beating LSU is great. They're a 2-loss team. Beat Kentucky's great, right? They're a 3-loss team. Okay, 2 losses if Will Levis plays against South Carolina. But the big time is Georgia, and they beat Alabama. Fair enough, at home. 2-loss team. But Georgia's like the defending national champions, like you said, Jared. Not much turnover on defense and offense. So you go on the road, first big road game of the season, and they killed them. So very much credit to Georgia. And yeah, it makes it interesting now, Jared, because before we get to LSU and Alabama, the current college football rankings have Tennessee at number 5 and Oregon at number 6, both with the same exact record and both with blowout losses on the road to Georgia. So it's like it now creates this scenario of like, okay, well, obviously if TCU just goes undefeated, they're in. If one of Michigan and Ohio State will likely go undefeated, barring a just disastrous loss to another team. If either of those teams lose to any other team, they're out, realistically. And if Ohio State loses to whoever they play this week, I think it's Indiana, and then they go beat Michigan, they're both out, in my opinion. They're both out. So, and then Georgia goes undefeated. What the committee has done is they've created this weird scenario where, like, if LSU, I guess, wins the SEC and is able to beat Georgia, do they leapfrog a one? It's weird because Tennessee also blew out LSU. So there's this weird gap between 4 and below that's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Do you see this, Jared? With me too. It's like Tennessee, Oregon lost to the number 1 team, and by a lot. And then LSU, who's number 7, they got blown out by the number 5 team. They got blown out by Georgia, and Oregon got blown out by Georgia. And it's like, what do we do now? Right? Is that in your opinion? Does that mean that everybody ahead, like if they just win out, they're in? Right? Do you? I'll more at this because I know you believe that Georgia goes 13-0, TCU goes 13-0, they're in, right? You agree with that?
Done.
And then the winner of Michigan Ohio State is in. Do you think at this point that if the only loss we see from all those teams is in the Michigan Ohio State game, that this is the Final Four?
No, I don't, because as bad as this loss was for Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee is still out of it. Right. And here's the thing that we have to remember in the SEC, that they're broken down into 2 divisions within that conference, right? So it's not like it's just one conference. So there's an SEC championship game that there's the potential for them to still go into. And they're still at number 5. So they're the first team out. So like you said, when Ohio State and Michigan play, one of those teams is going to get knocked out, right? if Georgia stays undefeated, they're clearly number 1. The winner of Michigan, Ohio State will more than likely be number 2. TCU, if they continue to win out, they have a big game this Saturday at Texas, right? So another big test for them. But if TCU stays undefeated, they will probably be number 3. And then to me, if Tennessee has to blow out Missouri, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Those are the next 3 games.
Absolutely.
The reason
100%.
why, and then obviously they would have the SEC championship game. Probably,
No, not Tennessee won't.
No, they won't. You're right.
Yeah,
My bad.
they
won't. I forgot. The reason why I think Tennessee is still in is because of the ranked teams that they have beaten, right? Starting with, at the time, number 17 Pittsburgh. At the time, number 20 Florida. At the time, number 25 at LSU. At the time, number 3 Alabama. At the time, number 19 Kentucky. Most of those being coming from the SEC. So to me, because of that win resume, and then having that one ugly loss, I think they still have a path to get in, right? So I look at it, and you're right, it is very interesting. But to me, I'm looking at it and saying Tennessee, being the first team outside of the top 4, has the best chance to get in over in Oregon because their strength of schedule is better. So they both lost to Georgia, both gotten their asses whooped by Georgia, but I would still put Tennessee ahead because they have a better schedule, and I think they're clearly just a better team. Oregon hasn't had as big of a schedule. Their best win was against UCLA, who is still ranked at number 12 and a very solid team, but UCLA is not an SEC team. They're not Florida, they're not LSU, right? So they're not Alabama, clearly. So that's where I would still think TCU has an opportunity. And it would take a lot for Oregon to have to leapfrog. LSU is a 2-loss team, and they're currently sitting at number 7, ahead of Alabama, who's also a 2-loss team, ahead of USC, ahead of UCLA, ahead of, you know what I mean? It's like right now I think we have 3 of the 4 teams in the college football rankings that we're going to see. It's going to be Georgia. It's probably going to be TCU, and then Ohio State or Michigan. And then you probably, as of right now, plug in Tennessee. That's kind of where I'm thinking right now.
So you're thinking that I think you're going to base this off schedules, right? The loser of Ohio State, Michigan is not making it.
No, because
you know what, Jared?
I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Ohio State beating Michigan or Michigan beating Ohio State. Both of those schedules as well.
It's terrible.
Suck. They both had, I think Ohio State, their first 5 games were at home. Michigan, their first 4 games were at home. Their schedules don't compare to a 1-loss Tennessee. So if they end up with the same record, right? Because one of those teams will have 1 loss, and we're considering here that Tennessee is going to blow out the rest of their teams. So they have the same record. They each have 1 loss, and Tennessee played an SEC schedule. Yeah, I'm going to put Tennessee above Ohio State or Michigan in that sense. Whoever.
Yeah, no, Jared, here's the thing. I don't disagree with you. I think we agree 100% on this. Michigan, Ohio State. Here's some facts to what you were saying, just to back you up, because I have them all written down here. Michigan, Ohio State will play 4 road games this season, 8 home games. Okay? 4 road games, 8 home games. And one of those for Ohio State is against Michigan. So Michigan beating Ohio State would be very impressive, because it would be on the road as well. And that's why Ohio State.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why Ohio State's performance against Northwestern this week is like, we get it. Bad weather. Northwestern has 1 victory this season. What the fuck was that, Ohio State? Like, I mean, what was that? Come on. I know they're missing a lot on offense, but still, can't run the ball, and they're relying on Marvin Harrison's son and C.J. Stroud to win games at this point. But yeah, the way the Big Ten goes, they will have 4 road games, and then the winner of the game will have a neutral site game against. This is who it's going to be, Jared. It's either going to be Illinois, not very good, shouldn't even be in the top 25 based on my research. Wisconsin, not good. Purdue, Iowa, Minnesota. That's who they're going to play in the Big Ten championship game. So the only good wins that Michigan and Ohio State have this season were very, very solid wins against a very good Penn State team, a top 15 Penn State game. Michigan at home, Ohio State on the road. Ohio State does have a solid win against Notre Dame's defense. Notre Dame sucks. They had lost to Stanford, who's awful, and Marshall, who's a bad Conference USA team. They should not be in the rankings. Okay?
No.
Go ahead.
I don't think that they should be in the rankings, but I'm not going to say that they suck.
They don't suck.
Because they beat Clemson the way they beat Clemson. They destroyed Clemson. They didn't just beat Clemson. It wasn't just a home game, like at night at Notre Dame. Clemson almost, like, yeah, whatever, that's their first loss, so they're going to stay in the top 10. Clemson should be like number 20. I've been telling you all year long, Clemson is fucking frauds. They don't deserve to have their ranking, and they proved me right. So I'm going to give Notre Dame more credit because I never thought Clemson was going to do anything this year anyway. I don't care what Clemson does the rest of the year. Clemson could have slid all the way to number 20, in my opinion. Get them out of there. They don't deserve to be number 10. UCLA and Ole Miss should be above Clemson. Clemson is out. So I'm going to give Notre Dame a little more credit. And I'm not going to say they suck. They're not good, but they don't suck. They suck.
Well, no,
suck.
It's if you go like in my top 25, again, guys, I watch a lot of the games. I'm not just sitting here playing fucking Monday morning quarterback with these games. Okay. I watched 7 college football games this last Monday. And I also watched all of the games leading up to the 4:00 window. And the games I watched were all past the 4:00 window. So I caught up on LSU, Alabama, Texas, Kansas State, which was a great game. Either team could have won. I had, as far as 3-loss teams go, Kansas State, Louisville, South Carolina, Kentucky. They were all had better resume than Notre Dame. So I don't understand why Notre Dame's number 20, besides the fact that they're the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. That's the only thing. Offensively, they only ran the ball against Clemson and were able to beat them. If they were to play Georgia, they would fucking lose by like 60. Okay, guys, come on. But nonetheless, what I was saying though, Jared, is again, it goes to our point. Like Ohio State's biggest wins on the season were a road win at Penn State, whiteout, impressive. Without one of their top receivers in Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? They lost one of their running backs, Mayan Williams, in the first or second quarter, right? Still an impressive win. And then besides that, it's Notre Dame. I don't care about Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan State. Those are all easy wins, okay? And for Michigan, Maryland, they're solid, but they're not as good as I thought they were. Michigan State, rivalry game, fight in the tunnel, whatever. Iowa, and then at home against Penn State, they haven't struggled against anybody. They've kicked everybody's ass, which is nice and what you should do. And that's why I think Michigan will beat Ohio State, barring the injured guys coming back. But I agree with you, Jared. This will be a 11-1 team that does not have the resume that Tennessee or Oregon has, or UCLA or USC. Whoever wins the Pac-12 will have a better resume than Ohio State or Michigan with 1 loss. So, yeah, I think that game is for a playoff spot. And if you want to argue with me, you're either have money on Ohio State or Michigan, or you just don't do research. Because, Jared, you agree with me. The research is there. Okay, so here we go. We're at the rankings, right? So we had Georgia at number 1. We don't argue they're number 1. Michigan, Ohio State right now should be 2 and 3. TCU at 9-0 should be 4. Then we talked about Tennessee at 8-1, Oregon at 8-1. Now we get to LSU. Okay, at number 7. And I just realized that besides me having Michigan at number 2 and Ohio State, I actually had the top 7 exactly correct. But so Ohio State's number 2, excuse me. Michigan's number 3 in the real rankings, not the Nick Nenad rankings. But so now we get to LSU, and LSU Jared, your comments on their win against Alabama.
I mean, listen, like, I think they had showed a graphic that LSU had only beaten, before Saturday's game, had only beaten Alabama once in the last 10 years, and that was the 2019 team, the championship team with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and all those crazy dudes, right? Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, yeah. But other than that, like, Alabama has owned LSU, right? Now, this game went into overtime, and it was crazy, and it was fanatic, and in LSU, so they have that home crowd behind them. But I gotta say, man, like, that how LSU started this season, like, starting at the top, right? New coach and Brian Kelly, supposed to be the new, like, going to be a top 10 team all year long, literally falling off the map, falling out of the top 25, and now coming all the way back to beat Alabama and to get to number 7. I got to give these guys some credit, man. Like, I don't necessarily sit here and, like, trust their defense. It's almost kind of like USC, where it's like, yeah, they can probably score and put up some points, and, like, on paper, talent-wise, they can probably match up with any team in the country. But I look at their defense, and I don't know. They gave up a lot of points. They gave up 40 to Tennessee in a big loss. They gave up 35 to Florida. They only gave up 20 to Ole Miss, which is good. So I like them, but I still, when I go to the resume and I go to their win-loss record and I see 2 losses already, I don't know, man. It's the SEC. It's literally playing in the SEC, right? Like, if this were USC or UCLA and they were in the SEC, they'd probably be higher. It's the SEC. If LSU was in the Big 12 or Big 10 or any other conference, LSU would probably be 10, 11, to 12 right now. But because they're in the SEC, they're sitting at number 7. So, and they have a direct path now to get to the SEC championship game, where they would be playing Georgia, right? And then Georgia's probably going to win that game, but you never know. So it's a good win for them. And obviously, I think from the perspective of the rivalry, it's huge. But I just go back to those 2 losses already, and I'm like, can we really trust him? Because to me, I can't trust Brian Kelly. We saw what he did at Notre Dame. We saw how it's kind of like the Clippers, right? It's like they get there, they get to the playoffs, and they get to the second round, and then they fall apart.
It's so unnecessary.
Oh, it's necessary.
Jared, Lakers are 1-9.
What else can I do? All I can do is dig on the Clippers right now. So, yes, the LSU Tigers are the Clippers. On paper, they look great. They have all this star talent. They have a good coach, all this stuff. And then they get to the playoffs. And other than 2019, now, if Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson have some eligibility left, if they're able to come back and play for LSU, then I would vote them as the favorites. And they would have a fighting chance. But I can't. Great win against Alabama. Good for you. It's your big rival. I can't trust them right now, especially not with 2 wins, man. They just, like I said, USC should probably be ahead of them. I'm glad that Oregon is showing some representation in the Pac-12, but nah, I don't think I can trust them. Can't trust them.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. They're at Arkansas this Saturday. Only 3-point favorites.
Arkansas has fallen off. Arkansas has completely fallen off. Like, losing to Liberty on homecoming.
Yeah, that's and you know what? And Jared, remember I was talking about, like, I was high in Arkansas because, again, they lost their QB for a game, and then they lost to somebody. It's exactly the same as saying, like, the SEC really is a good conference this year. A lot of people are talking shit on the SEC. It's like, no. Like, everybody's good besides Vanderbilt. Like, if you actually look at the way they play each other, everybody's really good, except Vanderbilt. The second worst team is probably Texas A&M, which is insane. But they've been hampered, but they haven't figured out their quarterback, all this stuff, right? Yeah, LSU, they're at Arkansas, 3-point favorites. Okay, I think Vegas knows something. We might have an upset, a letdown by LSU.
That would be like a 9.5 for me, point favorite. There's no way it should be 3.
Yeah, but I think Vegas knows that LSU has trouble against teams that run the ball, like Arkansas does. So it's interesting. Let me get to this SEC thing really quickly. So they play Arkansas. Then they play UAB. Jared, they play another Alabama team, the UAB Blazers. Your favorite thing in college football, the SEC scheduling cakewalks a week before, and then they're at Texas A&M. So they do have at Texas A&M is not easy.
No.
But if they're able to go through there, they're 10-2, and then like you said, Jared, at that point they're in the SEC title game because they'll have a better record than Ole Miss, and they beat Ole Miss. So Ole Miss is going to need another loss, and then Ole Miss is also going to need to beat Alabama this Saturday, at Arkansas, and then Mississippi State. All those teams are solid. Mississippi State's not that good, but it's a rivalry game, and it's Mike Leach, and he's insane. So, I think that what you're saying, Jared, is like the two losses, because if you go back and look at that Florida State loss, like I know they lost on a blocked field goal, but they deserved to lose that game. Like they got outplayed by Florida State, and Florida State's a good team too. I had them actually at number 18 in my rankings. I think they were actually pretty high up there somewhere. If you actually look at Florida State's resume, they're a good team, but they lost twice. So right now, again, there's a plateau of like, you can't put LSU above Tennessee. Tennessee kicked their ass. So no matter what, LSU's at least number 5, right? I guess you'd have to have Michigan and Ohio State both lose, which would be nearly impossible. TCU lose too, something like that, in order for LSU to get it. So then, Jared, we get to 8 through 12, which is where this is the one that really pisses me off. The end of this, and I'll just let me go on a rant for a second. Okay? So in the actual rankings, it's and by the way, again, I have no problem with top 7. I agreed. Number 8 USC, number 9 Alabama, 10 Clemson, 11 Ole Miss, 12 UCLA. That makes no sense. All of it makes no sense. All of it. Okay. Here's the thing. USC is not that good this year. Okay. USC has 6 very easy wins. They have a solid win against Washington State, who's okay. And they had a road win at Oregon State, who has 3 losses. And they lost to Utah on the road by 1 point. Lost Jordan Addison. A lot of penalties. Okay. They have not beaten anybody good this season. Anybody of note? Oregon State's a top 40 team. They're not a top 25. They lost to Washington last Friday. Okay. Alabama, who's right behind them, they've beaten Texas, they've beaten Arkansas, and their losses are against 2 top 7 teams.
Shouldn't have beat Texas.
Yeah, they shouldn't have beat Texas. I agree, but they still were able to, right? Again, but if you look, Jared, like USC versus Alabama, who's winning? Even if it's in LA. Even if it's in LA, yeah. So right now, now you look at who's number 10? Clemson. Fuck off with that. Okay, we already explained it. They're if you actually look at their schedule and who they've beaten, it's not that bad. They've beaten Florida State on the road. They've beaten a fully healthy NC State team. Okay, but that loss against Notre Dame, who's not that good of a football team, they're a solid football team. They're not that good. Combined with the fact that the last 2 weeks, they have no idea who their quarterback is. The eye test tells us Clemson is not going to make they are not a college football playoff team. They're 8-1, but they just not. We know. Okay. Literally, Jared, last week, they brought in, they started DJ. DJ's struggling. They put in the backup. The backup throws a pick immediately, and then they brought DJ back in, and they still lost by like 30. Right? It's terrible. So
you've already talked about Clemson too long. It's
yeah, again. And if you're looking at it, guys, answer this question, and Jared, you can answer it too. USC versus Clemson. I think USC has a chance. Alabama. Clemson, Alabama versus Clemson. Alabama kicks
by 100.
Ass.
By 100.
Now we look at number 11 and number 12. Okay. This one really makes no sense. Ole Miss at number 11, UCLA at number 12. Okay. Ole Miss, 6 very easy wins. A road win against Texas A&M, who has more losses than wins. And a good win against Kentucky, albeit they had every chance to lose that game, and Kentucky more lost it than Ole Miss won it. Go back and watch the tape. And they had a 25-point loss, which is that's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 possessions, Jared Smith. 4 possession loss to LSU. On the road, but during the day, not as easy, not as hard as at night in LSU. UCLA has 6 easy wins. A win against number 25 Washington, according to the college football playoff. 2 losses. And a 3-possession win without a joke pick 6 at the very end of the game against Utah. I call that a 3-possession win because that's what it was. DTR was trying to get 400 yards, and he threw a terrible pass. He got pick 6. Okay, it was just stat. Okay, they won by 17. All right. And their losses to Oregon, not as bad as the LSU. Oregon's rated number 6. LSU's number 7. How the fuck is UCLA below Ole Miss? Okay. And then when you look at Ole Miss and UCLA, their resume's better than USC's. So the whole thing's messed up. UCLA 100% should be in the top 10. Again, if you lined up UCLA versus USC right now, good argument UCLA wins against UCLA. USC. They'll probably be favored because they're in the Rose Bowl. Okay? If you line them up against Clemson right now with the way Clemson's playing, UCLA with their running game, with what Notre Dame just did, they're beating Clemson. Alabama, not so much. I had UCLA only at 8 because they had 1 loss. I'm a little bit biased, but realistically, they should be behind Alabama. I think Alabama beats UCLA. And they should be ahead of Ole Miss. So right there, Alabama 8, UCLA 9. That's what I would do. Okay? Have Ole Miss, or actually I had Utah at number 10 this week. Because Utah, with 2 losses, because remember, there's a 2-loss team at number 7. Utah with 2 losses, big win against USC, road loss to UCLA, and a road loss to Florida, which is one of the toughest places to play. That's better than Clemson, Ole Miss, and USC. And they beat USC. So how the fuck come on. They beat USC. How are they behind them? Jared, your comments on all this. This is a very hard, I think your top 7 are pretty secured right now. And then whatever UCLA, Oregon, and USC do the rest of the season, that will determine where the Pac-12 is. But right now, 7 solid. How do you explain 8 through 12 right now?
Yeah, I don't know if I can. We both agree that Clemson should be out. Clemson does not deserve to be number 10, nor should they. Alabama is number 9 because even though they have 2 losses, this is like the first time they've had 2 losses in probably 10 years. So
well, they're still good football. They're still great football.
Still good football team. So that's where they're there. USC, while I think UCLA will be favored, and I think UCLA will probably win that game because it's at the Rose Bowl. USC, their last 2 games, so they play Colorado this upcoming Saturday, and then it's at UCLA and at home against Notre Dame. Currently standing, UCLA and Notre Dame are ranked, right? Notre Dame coming back into the rankings after. Now, we can debate that if we want to, but I don't know, and I'm speculating here, but I'm assuming that the committee is looking at USC and saying Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, if they can get Jordan Addison back, that offense is legit. And then if they beat a ranked top 10 UCLA team or top 12 UCLA team, and then they beat a rival in Notre Dame who's making somewhat of a comeback, I think they're looking at that and saying, yeah, they haven't played anyone tough, but their last 2 weeks was a tough schedule for them. So I think it's almost like we have to wait and see. And so until they drastically fall off, they're just keeping them there. So I don't have a strong argument for them. As you can see, I'm kind of grasping at straws here. But that's my legitimate thinking, or that's my thinking, is that they still have UCLA and Notre Dame, their two toughest opponents of the year. If they had already played those two toughest opponents, might be a different story and a more legitimate reason to put them at number 8.
Sure.
But it's almost like we're keeping them there as a wait and see what happens. Now, obviously, if they lose to either UCLA or Notre Dame, they're down as well. But it's a wait and see approach. Ole Miss and UCLA should be above Clemson, no doubt. Once again, Ole Miss is sitting at number 11 because they're in the SEC. That's the only reason I can think of.
It's the only reason.
Because you have legitimate points about UCLA, but they're in the Pac-12, where there's really only 3 good teams in Oregon, USC, UCLA. Ole Miss, albeit with the loss and albeit with some tough, kind of like grinded out games, not really blowing too many good opponents out, it's still the SEC. And that's why the SEC, that's why everyone wants to be in the SEC, is because it's so great. And you can have an off week and you can have a loss. You can even have 2 fucking losses and still be Alabama and be in the top 10 because it's the SEC. Because every week is a struggle. So that's why they're in. It's easy to say that, but then it's also frustrating because you have a team that's probably better behind them in UCLA. So that's what it is. But for UCLA, their big game is against USC, right? Because then I think they have Arizona this week, and then next week USC, and then they finish the season at Cal. And you can call it a rivalry game if you want to, but they're going to kill Cal. So that's the thing, is USC is in a better position because they have 2 tough games coming up in UCLA and Notre Dame. UCLA only has the 1 tough game against USC. And you can say that UCLA has had a tougher schedule than USC so far, but I think the committee is saying if USC can beat UCLA and Notre Dame, then that's why they're deserving of being ahead of them. I'm not agreeing with it. I'm just trying to rationalize in my head why the rankings are the rankings are. But Clemson, get the fuck out of here. Alabama, we know why you're there. Ole Miss, I just told you why you're there, because you're in the SEC. And UCLA, you're kind of just the odd man out. UCLA, you're having to hope that obviously one of Ohio State and Michigan is going to lose to each other. You have to hope that TCU loses to Texas. You have to hope that Tennessee falls off. Let me think. Obviously, UCLA, you have to beat USC. Like there's like all these
Oregon.
ifs. And Oregon, right? Yeah. There's all these ifs that go along with it, and so it's just for them. I think they just got the short end of the stick this year. And what that tells them, what that would tell me if I was at UCLA or even at USC for that matter, you need to schedule tougher games, right? Like I think we can say that about a lot of teams this year, and not just UCLA. I'm not just bagging on them, but it's
look what happened to Oregon. Look what happened to Oregon.
But guess what? Yeah, no, exactly. Look what happened to Oregon. They got blown the fuck out. They didn't just lose. They got annihilated, and they're sitting at number 6 now, ahead of UCLA.
Oh, wow. Okay, I hear you saying, yeah.
So what I'm saying is your non-conference schedules, the games that you can schedule year in and year out, need to be tougher. Like, let me pull up UCLA's schedule. Your first couple weeks of the season, it can't be Bowling Green and Alabama State and South Alabama. It simply can't. Like, at least Oregon had the cojones to schedule Georgia in Atlanta.
Yeah, but Jerry, it might keep them out of the playoff. That's the thing.
But they would have, I guarantee, if UCLA had scheduled an SEC opponent to start the year and taken out one of those 3 shit teams that I just mentioned, UCLA right now would be in the top 10. They wouldn't be number 12.
Well, here, I'll say, here's what you need to do, okay? I have a lot to say still about this, but what you need to do is schedule them week 3. Don't schedule week 1.
That's fine.
Yeah. schedule.
Okay, but
Schedule Kentucky or
no.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: the later you lose, the worse it gets. So if you go and you kill, no one's gonna listen. Here's the thing. Okay, you want to play that game? You want to schedule an SEC opponent? You want to schedule Georgia week 3? You play Bowling Green
Not
week
Georgia.
1 and you kill them.
Georgia.
An SEC team, whatever. You schedule Bowling Green week 1 and you schedule Alabama State week 2. No one's gonna give a shit. You haven't played a game this year, not in my mind. You can be 2-0 in the actual rankings, but you haven't played a game yet. Then you go and you lose to an SEC team. You're now in week 3 going into week 4 with a loss. Oregon, like I said, lost in week 1, which sucks. They had a huge hole in their hearts, but that gave them 2 extra weeks to come back. And that's currently why Oregon is sitting at number 6 or wherever the hell they are right now. So the earlier you have a loss, the better, because that's more time for you to make it up. You schedule that in week 3 or week 4 or week 5, and then you lose, you have less chances to make that up, right? And one of the things I think that we've noticed with the committee is, what have you done for me lately? Yeah. So you have to schedule that week 1. Fucking Bowling Green and Alabama State, South Alabama, get out of here. You can't do that again. You can't.
Jared, I'll say this too. I'll give you a little credit with this. Guess who also scheduled an SEC opponent on the road and is up still high in the rankings? Utah. Same thing against Florida. Week 1. And you know what? I agree with that too, because
and they only lost by 3.
Yeah, no preseason. Well, Florida's not that great of a team, but yeah, of course. No, I mean they're a solid team. They're just not great. Losing in college football is a lot different than losing in the NFL week 1. It's the NFL, like, you could at least blame it on, hey, you guys had 3 games and you didn't play Kyler. You didn't play Dak. You didn't play Mahomes. That's why you lost week 1. College football, there's nothing that happens. You go right in. So that's all I'm saying with the whole. But yeah, it's understandable. Like a loss in week 1, I've always said, you go 11-1. That loss in week 1 does not mean as much as a loss in week 5, week 7. Okay, let me just get on to some stuff real quick about UCLA. Okay. So UCLA, this is Jared, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love it. The first of all, UCLA is in total offense higher than Ole Miss and USC, as well as Clemson, as well as Alabama. That's nothing to do with the record. All those teams, they're higher than. And in total defense, they're also higher than USC and Ole Miss. USC is actually like bottom 40 in defense right now, so not good. Rushing wise, UCLA is number 7. Ole Miss is actually pretty high rushing wise, but so yeah, total offense, total defense, they're higher ranked than both Ole Miss and USC, so they should at least be higher than that. Let's just say again. Alabama plays UCLA right now. I'm picking Alabama to win. Every other team, I'm giving UCLA the edge against all those teams. So that's why top 10, you got to win out. Then, like you said, Jared, the same thing you said about USC, you can also say with UCLA. They have to beat USC and they have to go beat Oregon again. Oregon actually has a really tough schedule to end the year. They listen to this, Jared. Not only are they 8-1, this is why this is the best Pac-12 team already. You know, they've already beaten UCLA. They get Washington, top 25 team, at home. Utah at home. God damn, I mean, every fucking game they have is at home. It's, you know, Utah at home, back-to-back weeks, and then Oregon's at Oregon State in a rivalry game. If Oregon runs the table and then UCLA or USC is able to beat them, you're beating a legit team. You are beating a legit team. Oregon probably be ranked top 4 in those games. But at that point, you rank Oregon top 4, you got to put the edge. So both those teams still have a chance. I'm just saying right now, UCLA, not only with their record, not only with who they've played, statistically also they are better than Ole Miss and USC. And then here's the other thing. You know, Jared, there's the 12-team playoff that's going to happen in a couple of years. So the way it would format right now, you would have, if the season ended right now, you'd have Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, all with byes. You would have USC and Alabama. Awesome. First week. You'd have Clemson versus LSU. You'd have Oregon versus Ole Miss. And then Jared Smith, you'd have Tennessee versus Tulane, because the non-Power 5 gets in. So this ranking of UCLA, it smells fishy to me. Put them at 12. That means they'd be out. Not only are the Final 4, but they're the Final 12. And guess who the number one guy in the committee is, Jared? It's Boo Corrigan. He is the NC State athletic director. UCLA canceled the Holiday Bowl against NC State, and Boo Corrigan was really, really angry about it last year. You know, all UCLA was trying to do is not give everybody COVID. I think it's a personal attack against UCLA from that, like, who names their fucking son Boo? Okay? His real name's Eugene. Also, who names their son Eugene? I don't know.
Whoa, I got an uncle named Eugene. I love him.
Okay, my bad.
Eugene.
My bad. But Boo is worse. Okay?
Yeah.
A white guy named Boo doesn't make any sense. Just say it. Okay? I think it's a personal attack from the NC State athletic director. And I also think that's why we see Clemson up there at number 10, because he's biased towards the ACC. And the ACC sucks. Okay? Florida State's solid. They're not great. NC State's solid. They're not great. Who else did they play? Who else is in that conference? Wake Forest, 3 losses. Should lost to Liberty. Stop it. Get out of here. ACC's not good. They don't deserve a shot. Syracuse was a fake to begin with. Okay? So, again, hopefully UCLA, you know, can go and win out, and then they can shove it in that guy's face. Okay? Also,
UCLA winning out ain't going to do shit. And as I have my current projections, Oregon winning out isn't going to do shit, because Tennessee, to me, still has a better schedule and record.
I will say this thing. This will be the last comment I make about the college football. We'll get on to the NFL. The committee has stated that they value the championship victory. So that's why Tennessee might be in a little bit of trouble if Oregon runs the table. That's why Tennessee might be in a little trouble if TCU runs the table. Michigan, you know what I'm saying? I think Michigan, Ohio State, the loser of that, is in trouble. That's what we're saying. They should be. Tennessee has to hope that LSU doesn't win the SEC championship, that Oregon doesn't win the Pac-12 championship, that like they want Oregon to lose in the next 3 weeks, and they want then Oregon to beat UCLA or USC. Because one loss USC, UCLA, I think hops above Tennessee. And arguably so. I mean, arguably so. If UCLA is fully healthy, why can't they go back and forth with Tennessee offensively? With the way Georgia just ran the ball and dominated Tennessee, why couldn't UCLA go and beat them? I don't think it's too out of the realm of possibility that they could go in and beat Tennessee. So I'm just saying, very, very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. Utah number 13 again. I think they should be up there. They're top 10 team to me. Top 10 team. They'd beat Clemson.
Above Clemson.
Yeah, above Clemson. Get Clemson out of there. Bias. Boo Corrigan. Fuck you. All right, that's the end of this Cover 2 podcast, guys. Follow me at the Rams game this Sunday. Follow us on social media covering college football this weekend. Some big games, Texas, TCU, Alabama, Ole Miss, and then, of course, the NFL, our 2 teams, Cowboys, Packers, Cardinals, Rams. Follow me on Sunday. I'll be live at the game. Jared will be tweeting about the Packers and the Jared, maybe I'll give you my Sunday ticket password so you can watch the Packers and Cowboys this weekend, since I'll be at the game. I'll do my friend a solid. All right, but yeah, for this podcast, we are done. I am Nick Nenad.
I am Jared Smith.
And we'll see you next week. Boo Corrigan. Boo!
Odo Beckham to Dallas, if you haven't heard of it.